you can't, we're practicing. We will be tested on that. Not really. Okay. So, what describes the coefficient, or what does the coefficient of restitution describe? What? I keep talking. Must be from the other room. It's like a low mumbling. Do you hear it? Yeah. Gary, you want to shut that door? Slam it. Just kidding. We got to send a signal. Yeah. Fine. Okay. Negative E, or negative, is the relative velocity after the impact divided by the relative velocity before the impact. Don't switch these. Don't switch those. If you do, that's bad. You'll get it wrong. In other words, V initial minus V final divided by U initial minus U final, U being the relative after, or excuse me, before impact. Relative velocity before the impact. Okay, so we have two balls flying. These are bocce balls. Anybody ever play bocce?
Yes.
Of course. So these are two bocce balls. And they both have a velocity prior to impact, U1, U2. And they also have a velocity after impact, V1, V2, right? Bonk. Right. So you ever have where they hit and they stop? Do you ever have them when they hit and one goes flying? You ever have them hit and they both kind of go back? Yeah. Lots of different situations. It's looking at those velocities before and after that contact. The difference in the two balls' velocity before impact is proportional to the difference in their velocities after impact. Now, will there be a difference if the two balls were on this floor as opposed to in the grass? Yeah, sure, because you have grass that's up, and so it could not let it go the other direction, right? Whereas on the floor, there's nothing holding it back. So, the factor of proportionality is what we call the coefficient of restitution. Questions? Carly, question? Trying to figure out where we're at in the notes? You have a question?
No, I was trying to
Okay. No problem. Got it. Straighten out. Good, good. All right, there are two different kinds of impact. Perfectly elastic impact. So what does that mean about restitution if it's perfectly elastic? Jerica?
In which the velocity of the system is conserved.
Meaning there's complete restitution. You just traded a van for a little motorcycle, and you completely redeem yourself. What's that from? Dumb and Dumber. Did you see? Have anybody seen the trailer for the new Dumb and Dumber movie?
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's good. It's gonna be fun. All right, so perfectly elastic impact in which velocity of the system is conserved, meaning the starting velocity before is going to be the same after. What would be an example? So E would be 1. What would be an example? What's the closest thing you can think of that would have a perfectly elastic impact?
Wouldn't they like hit and go back?
Yeah, what would be an example of that?
A rubber band.
Rubber band. Where's the collision? What's it colliding with?
Your finger.
We're not, no.
Well,
No. That's not a collision. Rubber band's not colliding, right? We're talking about collisions.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Bounce.
This thing, where they like hit each other.
Oh yeah, the never-ending pendulum.
Yeah, that thing.
That would be a good one. Otherwise, it would end. You know what I'm talking about? The little burp, 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 burp.
It does eventually.
Burp, burp. It does eventually.
That's going on YouTube now.
Oh no, it's not. Instagram. Oh boy. Does it eventually stop, you say?
Yeah, because of air resistance. I don't know. Because of something.
How do you know it stops?
Doesn't it? They
It
stop
has to
eventually.
eventually stop.
What?
It stops.
It stops because of.
It has to eventually stop. Huh? Well, tell me what. Explain to me. It's perfectly elastic. What's going to cause it to stop?
why.
Nothing will cause it to stop unless it's somebody that says, stop! Not just says it, but
I feel like I've seen it stop.
you've seen it stop.
I feel like I have.
You feel. What kind of
Well, like-
feeling was it?
like
A warm,
eventually-
fuzzy feeling inside?
Eventually, it like doesn't go quite. Like it's going really far, and then it kind of gets like down to here.
I never saw
If when you see it stop, you let me know. I don't need this. It feels like I think that it probably maybe did stop.
I'm just saying.
All right, so perfectly elastic is 100% restitution.
You've seen
I
it.
agree.
What about plastic? Perfectly plastic impact. What would be an example?
Car crash.
Sometimes they bounce off each other. Spit wad. I'm bringing one for the exam, just for you, Putin. It's gonna be really. I'm gonna use like a paper towel roll one. It's gonna be huge. I'm gonna put CO2 on it. Some good velocity on that side. It'll splat all over your face. There was a movie where that happened. Anyway, that's not an original idea. Anyway. What? All right, so perfectly plastic, or if you, I didn't bring my putty that I've been playing with all week. If I threw that against the wall, what would happen? Actually, no.
It bounces.
Yeah, I thought it would, and I grabbed it, and I dropped it, and thinking it was going to splat, and it bounced up and went all over the place and got like hair and crap. Kind of irritating, yeah, I know. Frustrating. Don't do this at home. All right, so perfectly plastic. Most things are somewhere in between a perfectly plastic and perfectly elastic impact. Right? Yeah. Okay. So what are some variables that influence the coefficient of I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Restitution, thank you. Gotta roll that R. Right? Yeah. What are some things that influence the coefficient of restitution? Michael, are there certain bats that are illegal in softball? Why? They have a really high coefficient of restitution to the point where it could hurt somebody, injure someone. Yeah? It comes with a warning label. Okay. Tennis. Our tennis star in the back room, Gary. What happens if your tennis strings get too loose? Your ball goes flying. All right, so too tight does what? Grips the ball more, and if they're really, really loose, okay, and if it's even more loose than that, where it's like almost hanging, they'll break, and the ball won't go anywhere. Right? So the tightness of those will. Gary, also tell us about tennis balls. Does the tennis ball change over time? What? Does anybody play tennis besides Gary? You ever open up a tennis? So if you ever go buy tennis balls and they're in a little sack, those are crappy tennis balls. Like a little mesh sack, you know what I'm talking about? Don't buy those because they're not very good. But the ones where you have the little pop off the top, what are they doing with? Why? What's going on? They're pressurized. What happens is you have greater pressure inside the ball than outside the ball, and so eventually what happens is they start to equalize. And the reason why is to give it more spring, or better, a higher coefficient of restitution, right? So the two surfaces, I like this picture. This is a golf ball flat against a metal, whatever it is. Pretty awesome. I've actually seen softballs. You play in men's league and a co-ed league. Is there a difference in the ball that's used?
Men's league is a lot higher. There's a mush ball.
In the men's league, it's a mush ball.
The women's league is the mush ball now.
Other way around. The density of the ball, the men's ball, is much softer. And the reason why is the harder that ball is, the further it's going to go flying. So it's extra softer.
Because men can do it harder.
They have greater initial velocity on the bat.
That's what I think.
What's that? So the smaller, harder ball for female, that's how they try to make it equal when you have co-ed league. So they'll pitch out a one ball for the men and a different ball for the women, so that they can hit it relatively the same length. The women's ball is a little bit smaller and it's a lot more dense, so it will travel a lot further. So these are some of the things that are going to influence coefficient of restitution. What about temperature? Anybody ever play handball? Like, there's a little, it's kind of like racquetball, except you do it with your hands in a racquetball court. You have gloves and everything. Anyway, when you first start playing handball, you have to warm up the ball. Does anybody play racquetball? After the first game, what happens to that ball? It becomes much more lively because of the temperature. It comes off much faster. What about a piece of clay? As you warm up that clay, what happens?
It's mushier.
It's mushier, but actually it becomes more plastic. So it depends on the object whether it increases in the coefficient of restitution increases or decreases. What about an impact between one moving and one stationary object? Impact equation can be written as coefficient of restitution is equal to the square root of HB over HD, where HB is the height it bounces and HD is the height it was dropped from. Don't switch these two. Common mistake. You know what else the other common mistake is? Forgetting to take the square root. Don't forget to do that either. So we have different objects. Does the basketball bounce differently on a wood court versus concrete? Rachel? Yeah? How so? Why? Because the basketball or the floor has some flex in the wood. Any gymnasts? Nobody's ever done gymnastics ever.
I've done it before.
So the floor routine, what's unique about that floor?
It's like a springboarding floor.
Yeah, it's basically a trampoline. Much stiffer than like the trampoline you get in the backyard. But why is that?
They can stand more.
Yeah, they can jump a heck of a lot higher. I can tell you right now, there's gymnasts who go like way up high in the air. They couldn't do that on a regular floor. Otherwise, they'd be like in the NBA or something. All right. So it all depends on the two objects. Try to drop a golf ball onto a wood floor versus a concrete floor. It's going to go much higher off the concrete. So it determines on the type of surface, determines on the ball. It's influenced by the ball, but mostly it's influenced by this height. Okay? So you drop it from here. Basketball on a concrete only goes 33 centimeters, whereas when you drop it on a wood floor, it goes almost twice the height. Now, it depends on the inflation of that ball as well. What happens if you overinflate a basketball, Rachel? It bounces really high and it's hard to control. But not for someone like Rachel, because she's pretty amazing. All right. So, what is the coefficient of restitution of a ball dropped from 3 meters that bounces to a height of